Millionaire disguised as homeless man to find wife in beauty pageant. The ending surprised everyone. Click subscribe to hear more exciting stories like this and avoid 10 years of bad luck in love. The sun was setting over the bustling city of New York, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the penthouse of a luxury skyscraper, Jack Morgan gazed at the horizon with a glass of whiskey in hand. At 35, he was one of the most successful businessmen in America, owner of a chain of luxury hotels that stretched across the country. However, his face did not reflect the satisfaction that should accompany a man in his position. Another disastrous date, he muttered to himself, recalling the evening that had just ended. The woman had been beautiful, no doubt, but her eyes sparkled with greed every time he mentioned his fortune. It was the same old story. Women who approached him attracted by his money, not for who he really was. Jack set the glass down on the crystal table and headed to his bedroom. He opened the closet, full of designer suits and custom-made shirts. His fingers brushed against the fine fabrics. But this time, instead of feeling pride, he felt a void in his chest. There has to be a way, he thought, frustrated, a way to find someone who loves me for myself, not for my bank account. It was then that his eyes fell on an old worn jacket, a memento from his college days. An idea began to form in his mind, a crazy and risky idea, but one that could be the solution to his problem. The next day, Jack called an urgent meeting with his trusted team. Among them was Mike, his best friend since childhood, and now his right-hand man in the company. "Are you sure about this, Jack?" Mike asked, with a mixture of concern and skepticism in his voice. "It's crazy, you could ruin your reputation." Jack nodded with determination. "It's a risk I'm willing to take, Mike. I'm tired of superficial relationships. I want to find someone who values me for who I am, not for what I have." The plan was bold. Jack would disguise himself as a homeless man and infiltrate the upcoming national beauty pageant, Miss United States. The event, which would bring together 50 beautiful women from all states in the country, would be the perfect stage for his social experiment. Under the pretext of being a maintenance helper, he would have the opportunity to observe the contestants when the cameras weren't rolling, seeing their true personalities. "But how are you going to get into the pageant?" asked Sarah, his personal assistant, always practical. Jack smiled. "That's where our ace in the hole comes in. Remember that TV network we bought last year? Well, it turns out they're in charge of broadcasting the pageant this year." Everyone's eyes widened in surprise as they understood the scope of the plan. "Mike, I need you to pose as my son and introduce yourself as the new owner of the network you'll say you want, to personally supervise the pageant, and that you're bringing your uncle to help you with some tasks." Mike nodded, although he still looked unsure. "What if someone recognizes you?" "They won't," Jack assured him. "I'll grow a beard, use contact lenses to change my eye color, and dress in old, worn clothes. No one would expect to see the famous Jack Morgan in those conditions." As Jack detailed his plan, the team began to catch his enthusiasm. Although it was still a risky idea, they could all see how important it was to him. "All right, boss," Mike finally said. "We're with you. But promise me one thing. If things get complicated, we'll abort the mission." Jack smiled, grateful for his team's support. "Deal." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Jack stopped shaving and began wearing old clothes around the house to get used to them. Mike practiced his role as the young heir, while the rest of the team took care of the logistical details. Finally, the day of the pageant arrived. Jack looked at himself in the mirror one last time before leaving his apartment. The man looking back at him was unrecognizable. Unkempt beard, worn and dirty clothes, and a tired look in his brown eyes, now hidden behind blue contact lenses. "Wish me luck," he muttered to his reflection before leaving. The pageant venue was a hive of activity. Beautiful women from all over America wandered nervously. Stylists ran from one side to another with dresses and makeup, and technicians adjusted the lights. And Sound Jack, in his homeless disguise, entered through the back door along with Mike, who was perfectly playing his role as the arrogant young businessman. "Remember, Uncle," Mike said loudly for everyone to hear, "stay close and do what I tell you. I don't want you causing any trouble." Jack lowered his head submissively, playing his part. "Yes, sir. Thank you for this opportunity." As they walked through the hallways, Jack could feel the looks of disgust and pity directed at him. Some of the contestants even moved away as he passed, as if they feared his poverty was contagious. "This is going to be harder than I thought," he said to himself. Suddenly, a soft and kind voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir, do you need help with anything?" Jack turned and found himself face to face with a young woman wearing the Pageant staff uniform. She had brown hair tied in a messy ponytail and large brown eyes that looked at him with genuine concern. Jack stammered, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "I'm Emma, the pageant assistant." The young woman introduced herself with a warm smile. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask me." Before Jack could respond, Mike intervened. "Don't worry about him. He's just my uncle. He's here to help me with some things." Emma nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on Jack. "I understand. Well, if you need anything, I'll be around." As she walked away, Jack couldn't help but follow her with his gaze. Amidst all the glitz and glamour, this simple and kind young woman had been the only one to treat him like a human being. "Focus," he reminded himself. "You're here for a reason." But as he delved into the chaotic world of the beauty pageant, Jack couldn't get Emma's sincere smile out of his head. Without knowing it, he had just met someone who would turn his whole plan and his life upside down. The hustle and bustle of the Miss United States pageant enveloped Jack like a cloud of expensive perfume and hairspray. From his strategic position near the dressing rooms, he observed the comings and goings of the contestants, each more beautiful than the last. However, his attention constantly drifted towards Emma, the assistant who had treated him with kindness. Emma moved gracefully through the chaos, solving problems and calming nerves with a patient smile. Her simple uniform and hair tied in a messy ponytail contrasted with the glamour surrounding her. But there was something about her authenticity that Jack found magnetic. "Hey you, the one with the beard," shouted an authoritative voice, snapping Jack out of his thoughts. It was Brittany Davis, the current Miss New York and favorite to win the national crown. "Bring me a mineral water, no gas, and make sure the glass is clean this time." Jack blinked, surprised by the dismissive tone. "Right away, miss," he mumbled, adopting a servile posture that went against all his instincts. As he went to fetch the water, he heard Brittany whisper to another contestant, "Can you believe they let people like that in here? This pageant is losing its class." The words hit him like a slap, reminding him why he had started this madness in the first place. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he didn't see Emma approaching, bumping into her and spilling the water on her uniform. "I'm so sorry," Jack exclaimed, mortified. "I'm such a klutz, But Emma just laughed, shaking the water droplets from her clothes. "Don't worry, it's an occupational hazard. Although I guess now I'll have to find another water for Miss Davis, huh?" Emma's complicit smile made Jack's heart skip a beat. "Let me help you," he offered, momentarily forgetting his role as an incompetent homeless man. Together, they headed to the supply area, chatting animatedly. Jack discovered that Emma was a journalism student and worked at the pageant to pay for her studies. "My dream is to be an investigative reporter," she confessed, as they filled a new glass of water. "I want to tell stories that matter, that change things, you know?" Jack nodded, fascinated by the passion in her eyes. "It's a noble dream," he replied, momentarily forgetting his disguise. "The world needs more people like you." Emma looked at him surprised. "You talk as if you've seen a lot of the world." Jack realized his mistake and quickly adopted a more humble posture. "Oh, I've seen some things on the streets. You learn a lot when no one pays attention to you." Before Emma could respond, Brittany's shrill voice echoed down the hallway. "Where's my water? Is it so hard to do something so simple?" Emma rolled her eyes. "Duty calls thanks for your help. What's your name?" "John," Jack lied, remembering the fake name he had chosen for his character. "Thanks, John." Emma smiled before walking away with the water. As he watched her leave, Jack felt a mix of emotions he couldn't explain. On one hand, he was fulfilling his mission of observing the contestants in their natural state. On the other, he couldn't help feeling attracted to Emma's authenticity and warmth. His thoughts were interrupted by Mike, who approached with a concerned expression. "Jack, we have a problem," he whispered. "I just found out that one of the judges is an old friend of yours from college. If he sees you, he could recognize you." Panic seized Jack. His entire plan could come crashing down in an instant. "What do we do?" he asked, feeling control slipping from his hands. Mike looked around, making sure no one was listening. "I have an idea, but it's risky. We could—" Suddenly, a scream was heard from the main stage. "Emergency, we need help up here." Without thinking, Jack ran towards the source of the commotion, momentarily forgetting his disguise and his mission. Upon reaching the stage, he saw one of the contestants, Miss Texas, lying on the floor, apparently unconscious. "Quick, we need a doctor," the host was shouting, while the other contestants looked on in horror. At that moment, Jack remembered his years of first aid training, a skill he had acquired during his backpacking days before inheriting the family business. Without thinking about the consequences, he pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the unconscious young woman. "I'm a nurse," he lied, quickly adapting his story. "Let me help." With confident movements, he checked the girl's pulse and placed her in the recovery position. Gradually, Miss Texas began to regain consciousness. "She'll be fine," Jack announced, feeling the astonished gazes of everyone present. It was probably just a fainting spell from the stress and heat of the lights. As he helped the young woman sit up, Jack noticed Emma's gaze fixed on him. Her eyes shone with a mixture of admiration and curiosity, as if she were seeing John for the first time. At that moment, Jack realized that his impulsive action could have compromised his cover. He had shown knowledge and skills that didn't fit with his homeless character. But seeing Miss Texas's grateful smile and Emma's intrigued look, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, the risk was worth it. As the chaos calmed down and the pageant resumed its course, Jack slipped away backstage, his mind whirling. How was he going to maintain his facade now? And why suddenly did he care so much about what Emma might think of him? What Jack didn't know was that his heroic action had aroused interest not only from Emma, but also from several contestants who had previously ignored him. In the shadows of the backstage, a storm of intrigues, jealousies, and revelations was brewing that threatened to disrupt not only the pageant, but also the heart of the millionaire disguised as a homeless man. The incident on the stage had shaken the foundations of the Miss United States pageant. What should have been a day of rehearsals and preparations had turned into a hotbed of rumors and speculation. At the center of it all was Jack, or John as he was known there. The mysterious helper who had shown unsuspected skills. Emma couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. As she organized the makeup schedules for the contestants, her mind kept going back to the image of John confidently attending to Miss Texas. There was something about him that didn't add up, a contradiction between his disheveled appearance and his confident, knowledgeable actions. "Emma, are you listening to me?" Brittany's irritated voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Sorry, Miss Davis. What were you saying?" Emma replied, trying to maintain a professional tone. Brittany let out an exasperated sigh. "I was saying that I want that man, John, or whatever his name is, to be my personal assistant during the pageant." Emma felt a pang of something she didn't want to recognize as jealousy, but, "Miss Davis, he's not part of the official pageant staff. We can't—" "I don't care," Brittany interrupted. "He just proved he's more competent than half the staff here. I want him on my team. Take care of it." Before Emma could protest, Brittany walked away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and impossible demands in her wake. Meanwhile, Jack found himself in a heated discussion with Mike in a secluded corner backstage. "What were you thinking?" Mike hissed. "You were supposed to go unnoticed, not become the hero of the day." Jack ran a hand through his fake beard, frustrated. I know, but I couldn't just stand by and watch as that girl needed help." Mike sighed, his anger giving way to concern. "I understand, but now we have a bigger problem. People are asking questions, and that judge, your old college buddy, is getting more and more curious about the new staff. At the pageant, we need to be more careful," Jack nodded. "Maybe I should keep a lower profile, stay in the service areas." His words were interrupted by Emma's arrival, who looked uncomfortable and somewhat upset. "John," she said, addressing Jack, "Miss Davis has requested that you be her personal assistant during the pageant." Jack and Mike exchanged panicked looks. This was exactly the opposite of keeping a low profile. I don't think that's a good idea," Jack stammered. I don't have experience in—" "Please," Emma interrupted him, and there was something in her voice, a mixture of plea and determination, that made Jack stop. "I know it's not part of your duties, but it would help us a lot. Besides," she hesitated for a moment before continuing, "I'd like to have you around to get to know you better." Jack's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, he forgot his mission, his disguise, everything. He only saw Emma with her eyes full of an emotion he dared not name. "Okay," he found himself saying before he could stop himself. "I'll do it." Mike shot him a warning look, but Jack ignored it. He knew he was complicating things even more, but he couldn't help it. There was something about Emma that attracted him in a way he had never experienced before. As Emma walked away to inform Brittany, Jack couldn't help but notice the smile of relief and joy that lit up her face. However, his moment of happiness was interrupted by Mike's voice. "This is a disaster," his friend muttered. "Do you realize that now you'll be under constant scrutiny from Brittany and the other contestants? One mistake and everything will come crashing down." Jack nodded, the reality of his situation falling on him like a weight. "I know, but I'll find a way to handle it. I have to." What neither of them knew was that their conversation hadn't gone unnoticed. In the shadows of the hallway, a figure had heard every word, her eyes gleaming with the spark of recognition and the promise of a juicy secret. That night, as the contestants retired to their rooms and the staff cleaned up the remnants of the day, Jack found himself wandering through the empty halls of the venue. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions and doubts. Was he losing sight of his original goal? Or perhaps without realizing it, had he found something more valuable in the process? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Instinctively, he hid behind a curtain, his heart pounding. "I'm telling you, there's something weird about that guy," he heard Brittany's voice. "Nobody with those skills would be settling for being a simple helper." "And what do you suggest?" replied another voice, which Jack recognized as Miss California's. "That we investigate all the Pageant employees?" "If necessary, yes," Brittany responded with determination. "I'm not going to let anything or anyone stand between me and the crown. And if that John is hiding something, I'm going to find out." Jack held his breath until the footsteps faded away. When he finally came out of hiding, his mind was working at full speed. Not only did he have to maintain his cover in front of Emma and the rest of the staff, now he also had to deal with Brittany's growing suspicion. As he headed to the small room he had been assigned as part of the staff, Jack couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. What had started as a simple social experiment was quickly turning into a dangerous web of lies and secrets. And at the center of it all was Emma, with her kind smile and eyes full of curiosity. Emma, who saw goodness in a supposed homeless man. Emma, who without knowing it was making the millionaire's heart beat in a way that none of his former conquests had managed to do. As he lay down on the uncomfortable bed, so different from his luxurious mattress, at home Jack made a decision he would go ahead with his plan, but he wouldn't lose sight of what really mattered. And maybe, just maybe, in the midst of all this chaos, he would find what he had always been looking for, a true love that went beyond appearances and money. What Jack didn't know was that fate had many more surprises in store for him, surprises that would test not only his wit but also his heart. Dawn arrived too soon for Jack. He woke up startled, disoriented for a moment to find himself in the small, austere staff room. The reality of his situation hit him like a cold wave. He was about to begin his first day as Brittany Davis's personal assistant, the ambitious Miss New York. As he prepared, carefully applying the makeup that accentuated his disheveled appearance, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Emma, her kind smile, her curious gaze. How could he maintain his charade in front of someone so genuine? His reflections were interrupted by a harsh knock on the door. "John, are you in there?" Brittany's impatient voice resonated through the hallway. Jack hurried to open the door, finding himself face to face with Miss New York's haughty beauty. "Good morning, Miss Davis," he mumbled, adopting a servile posture. Brittany looked him up and down with barely disguised disdain. "I hope you're ready. We have a very busy day ahead, and I won't tolerate delays or incompetence." As he followed Brittany through the corridors of the venue, Jack couldn't help but notice the curious glances he received from the rest of the staff and the contestants. His heroic action from the previous day clearly hadn't been forgotten. The morning passed in a whirlwind of activities. Jack found himself running from one side to the other, attending to Brittany's every whim, adjusting her wardrobe, bringing specific refreshments, even massaging her feet after a particularly long rehearsal session in heels. "You know, John," Brittany said as Jack applied a moisturizing cream to her feet, "for a nobody, you have surprisingly soft hands." Jack felt his blood run cold. It's because I use a lot of cream. I find it in hotel trash," he improvised, internally cursing his carelessness. Brittany narrowed her eyes, clearly unconvinced, but before she could inquire further, they were interrupted by Emma's arrival. "Miss Davis, it's time for your press interview," Emma announced, casting a concerned look at Jack. As Brittany prepared, Emma approached Jack. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "You seem different today." Jack felt his heart race. Was he so transparent? "I'm fine," he assured, forcing a smile. Just a little tired, Emma seemed to want to say something more, but at that moment, Brittany demanded her attention, and the moment passed. The press interview was an unexpected challenge for Jack. While he remained in the background, holding Brittany's purse and making sure she had water at hand, he couldn't help but notice a journalist who was looking at him with too much interest. "Excuse me," said the journalist, addressing Brittany but not taking his eyes off Jack. "Who is your new assistant? I hadn't seen him before." Brittany, clearly annoyed by the diversion of attention, answered dryly, "Oh, he's just temporary staff. Nobody important," but the journalist wouldn't give up. "He seems oddly familiar to me. Have we met before, Mr. John?" Jack mumbled, feeling the ground opening beneath his feet. "And no, I don't think so. I guess I just have one of those common faces." The journalist nodded slowly, but Jack could see he wasn't convinced. When the interview ended, he slipped away as quickly as he could, his mind working frantically. Had someone recognized him? Was he about to be discovered? In his rush to get away, he bumped into someone, spilling the contents of the tray he was carrying. To his horror, he realized it was Mike, disguised as the young heir of the television network. "Watch where you're going, idiot," Mike shouted, perfectly playing his role as the arrogant young man. Jack apologized profusely, bending down to pick up the mess. It was then that he noticed a paper that had slipped from Mike's pocket. He discreetly picked it up and, upon unfolding it, felt the world come to a halt. It was a photograph of him, Jack Morgan, in all his millionaire splendor, on the cover of a business magazine, and written in the margin, in handwriting he recognized as Brittany's, were the words, "Connection to John." Panic seized Jack. How had Brittany gotten that photo? Did she suspect something? His mind was working at full speed, trying to find a way out of this increasingly complicated situation. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he didn't notice Emma approaching until she gently touched his shoulder. "John, are you sure you're okay?" she asked, her voice full of genuine concern. "You've been acting strange all day?" Jack looked at her, feeling torn between the desire to confess everything and the need to maintain his charade. "Emma, he began, but the words caught in his throat. At that moment, the loudspeaker announced the start of the next round of rehearsals. Emma gave him one last squeeze on the shoulder before walking away, leaving Jack with a whirlwind of emotions and a secret that threatened to come to light at any moment. As he watched Emma walk away, Jack made a decision. He needed to talk to Mike urgently. Their plan was crumbling, and they needed to find a way out before it was too late. What Jack didn't know was that at that very moment, Brittany was making a phone call that would change the course of the entire pageant. "Hello? Investigation department? I need you to search for everything you can about a John and about Jack Morgan. I think we have an imposter among us." The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the Miss United States pageant and test not only Jack's determination, but also the true feelings that were blossoming between him and Emma. A continual night was falling over the Miss United States pageant venue, but for Jack, the shadows seemed to close in around him with each passing minute. After an exhausting day of dodging Brittany's suspicions and dealing with his own conflicting feelings, he finally managed to slip away to meet Mike in a secluded corner of the garden. "This is getting out of control," Jack whispered, running a hand through his fake beard. "Brittany suspects something. There's a journalist who I think recognized me, and Emma, is starting to ask questions." Mike looked at him with a mixture of concern and exasperation. "I warned you, Jack. This charade couldn't last forever. We need to end this now before it blows up in our faces." But Jack shook his head, his face a mask of determination and confusion. "I can't, Mike. Not yet. There's something here, something real with Emma." "Emma?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "The assistant? Jack, please tell me you haven't fallen in love with her." Before Jack could respond, a noise in the bushes alerted them. Both froze, holding their breath. After a few seconds of tense silence, a figure emerged from the shadows. "John? Is that you?" Jack's heart skipped a beat as he recognized Emma's voice. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Jack stammered. As Mike discreetly slipped away, Emma took a step forward, her face a mixture of confusion and determination. "I saw you. Hurry out, and I was worried, John. What's going on? I feel like there's something you're not telling me." Jack felt the world stop. Here it was, the moment he had both feared and longed for. He looked at Emma, saw the sincerity in her eyes, and in that instant, knew he couldn't keep lying to her. "Emma, you're right. There's a lot I haven't told you. I'm not who I say I am." Emma's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't step back. Instead, she took another step towards him. "Who are you then, John? Or should I call you something else?" Jack took a deep breath. "My name is Jack Morgan, and I'm not a homeless man or a helper. But before he could finish his confession, they were interrupted by the sound of heels rapidly approaching. Brittany emerged from the darkness, her face a mask of malicious triumph. "Aha! I knew there was something weird about you, John," she exclaimed, waving a paper in her hand. "Or should I say, Jack Morgan, the millionaire hotelier." Emma gasped, looking between Jack and Brittany with disbelief. What? What is she talking about, John Jack?" Jack felt the world crumbling around him. "Emma, please, let me explain." But Brittany had no intention of giving him that opportunity. "Oh, this is delicious. The famous Jack Morgan disguised as a homeless man in our pageant. What will the press say when they find out? What will the other contestants say?" "No," Jack shouted, panic taking over him. "Brittany, please don't do this." But Brittany was already dialing a number on her phone. "Hello? Press department? I have a story you're going to love." At that moment, something unexpected happened. Emma, who had been listening to everything in silence, stepped forward and snatched the phone from Brittany. "Hey!" Brittany shouted, but Emma ignored her. "Sorry, it was a false alarm," Emma said into the phone before hanging up. Then she turned to Brittany, her eyes shining with a determination Jack had never seen before. "Brittany, I know you want to win this pageant more than anything in the world, but do you really want to do it like this, by destroying someone else's life?" Brittany seemed to hesitate for a moment, but then her face hardened. "I don't care how I win, as long as I win." "What if I offer you something better?" Jack intervened, an idea forming in his mind. "Brittany, if you keep my secret, I promise that win or lose this pageant, you'll have a contract as a model for my hotel's advertising campaign. It's an opportunity that could catapult your career much further than winning Miss United States." Brittany looked at him, clearly weighing her options. After what seemed like an eternity, she slowly nodded. "All right, Morgan. You've got a deal, but if you betray me—" "I won't," Jack promised. With one last warning look, Brittany walked away, leaving Jack and Emma alone in the garden. The silence between them was heavy, loaded with unasked questions and half-revealed truths. "Emma," Jack began, but she raised a hand to stop him. "Don't say anything now," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly. "I need time to process all this. But I want you to know that, whoever you really are, the man I've known these past few days, that man matters to me." With those words, Emma turned and walked away, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts and the weight of his actions. As he watched her disappear into the darkness, Jack realized he had reached a point of no return. His original plan had crumbled, but in its place he had discovered something much more valuable. True love, born of authenticity rather than appearances. But would it be enough? Could Emma forgive his deception? And what would happen when the rest of the world discovered the truth? With a heavy but determined heart, Jack began to walk back to the building. He knew the coming. Days would be a challenge, but for the first time in a long time, he felt he had something truly worth fighting for. What he didn't know was that, hidden in the shadows, a figure had witnessed the entire scene. A figure who now held in their hands the power to destroy everything Jack had worked for, or perhaps to save it. The next morning dawned grey and rainy, as if the sky itself reflected the emotional turmoil stirring in Jack's heart. He woke up early, his tired eyes revealing a night of insomnia and worry. The weight of the truth, now partially revealed, seemed to crush his shoulders as he prepared to face a new day at the pageant. As he left his room, Jack came face to face with Mike, whose face showed a mixture of concern and reproach. "How bad is it?" Mike asked without preamble. Jack sighed deeply. "Brittany knows everything. I managed to buy her silence, but who knows for how long? And Emma, God, Mike, the expression on her face when she found out." Mike put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Jack, I think it's time you consider ending all of this. You've taken this charade too far." But before Jack could respond, a familiar voice interrupted them. "Charade? What charade?" Both men turned to see Emma standing in the hallway, her eyes full of a mixture of curiosity and disappointment. "Emma," Jack murmured, taking a step towards her. "Please, let me explain." Emma raised a hand, stopping him. "No, Jack or John, or whoever you really are, I think I deserve the whole truth, and I want it now." Jack looked at Mike, who nodded slightly before walking away, leaving them alone. "You're right," Jack finally said. "You deserve the truth. The whole truth." And so, in that deserted hallway, Jack began to unravel the complicated web of lies and half-truths he had woven. He told her about his life as a millionaire, his frustration with superficial relationships, his crazy plan to find true love. "I know it sounds ridiculous," he admitted, his voice broken with emotion, "but I never expected to find someone like you, Emma. Someone who would see beyond appearances, who would be kind to a supposed homeless man without expecting anything in return." Emma listened in silence, her face an indecipherable mask. When Jack finished, she looked him straight in the eyes. "Do you realize how selfish all of this has been?" She finally said, "You haven't just deceived everyone in this pageant. You've played with people's feelings, with my feelings." "I know," Jack replied, the guilt clear in his voice, "and I'm sorry more than I can express. But Emma, what I feel for you is real, more real than anything I've ever felt before." Emma closed her eyes for a moment, as if she were struggling with an internal decision. When she opened them again, there was a determination in them that made Jack's heart race. "I need time," she finally said. "Time to process all of this and decide if I can trust you again." Jack nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't total rejection either. Meanwhile, in another part of the venue, Brittany was nervously pacing in her room. The deal she had made with Jack weighed on her conscience, something that surprised her. She had always believed she would do anything to win, but now a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, she found herself face to face with Miss Texas, the contestant Jack had helped during her fainting spell. "Brittany," Miss Texas said, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to talk to you about something I heard last night in the garden." Brittany's heart stopped for a moment. Was Miss Texas the mysterious figure who had witnessed the entire scene? Meanwhile, in the pageant's press room, the journalist who had shown interest in John was making some calls. His instinct told him there was a big story hidden in this pageant, and he was determined to uncover it. As the day progressed, the tension in the pageant venue was palpable. The contestants were preparing for the next round of competition, but there was an air of uneasiness that didn't go unnoticed. Jack, still in his role as John, tried to fulfill his duties as an assistant, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he saw Emma, he felt a pang of guilt and longing. She, for her part, maintained a professional distance, but Jack could see the conflict in her eyes every time their gazes met Mike, playing his role as the E. Young heir observed everything from afar, ready to intervene if things got out of control. But even he couldn't foresee the turn events were about to. Take that afternoon, as the contestants were preparing for the swimsuit parade, a commotion erupted backstage. Screams and cries could be heard from one of the dressing rooms. Jack, driven by curiosity and concern, hurried towards the source of the chaos. What he found left him cold. Miss California was on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, while other contestants tried to console her. "It's a farce," she cried between tears. "This whole pageant is a farce." Before Jack could intervene, he saw Emma approaching quickly. Their gazes met for a moment, and in that instant Jack knew things were about to change drastically. Emma took control of the situation with surprising calm. "Please, everyone, give her space," she said in a firm but kind voice. Then, addressing Miss California, she asked, "What do you mean the pageant is a farce?" The young woman, between hiccups, managed to articulate, "I heard it. I heard Brittany talking to someone. They were saying something about a disguised millionaire and a secret deal. This pageant is rigged." A sepulchral silence fell over the dressing room. Jack felt the ground opening beneath his feet. His gaze met Emma's, and in her eyes he saw a mixture of understanding and determination. At that moment, Brittany entered the dressing room, her face a mask of false concern. "What's going on here?" she asked, but stopped short when she saw the scene in front of her. Emma, without taking her eyes off Jack, took a step forward. "I think," she said in a clear and firm voice, "it's time we all know the truth, the whole truth." And so, in that dressing room full of beauties from all over America, with the pageant on the brink of chaos, Jack knew that the moment of truth had arrived. There was no turning back now. What happened next would change not only the course of the pageant, but the course of his life, and that of everyone involved. With his heart pounding strongly, Jack stepped forward, ready to face the consequences of his actions and perhaps find the redemption he so longed for. The dressing room, once filled with laughter and pre-contest nervousness, was now submerged in a tense silence. All eyes converged on Jack, who felt the weight of each pair of eyes on him. Emma, standing by his side, gave him a look that was both a challenge and a silent plea. Jack took a deep breath. It was now or never. "You're right," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "This contest, my presence here, it's all been part of a farce. But not in the way you think." With shaking hands, Jack began to remove the fake beard and makeup that had transformed him into John. Gasps of surprise and murmurs of confusion filled the room as his true appearance was revealed. "My name is Jack Morgan," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "I'm the owner of the Morgan luxury hotel chain. And yes, I disguised myself as a homeless man to infiltrate this pageant." Chaos erupted in the dressing room. The contestants were all talking at once, some outraged, others confused. Brittany, in a corner, seemed to be debating between triumph and panic. Silence. Emma's voice cut through the noise. Everyone fell quiet, surprised by the authority in her tone. "Let him finish." Jack gave her a grateful look before continuing, "I know what I did was wrong. I deceived all of you, and I have no excuse. But you must know that my motives were not malicious. I was looking for something authentic in a world that seemed increasingly superficial to me." He paused, his eyes meeting Emma's. "What I didn't expect was to find much more than I was looking for. I found kindness, compassion, and true love." A collective sigh ran through the room. Emma, with tears in her eyes, took a step towards Jack, but before she could speak, the dressing room door burst open. Mike rushed in hurriedly, followed by the journalist who had been asking questions. "Jack, we have a problem," the press. But it was too late. Flashes of cameras illuminated the dressing room as a horde of journalists burst in, shouting questions and pushing each other. "Mr. Morgan, is it true that you infiltrated the contest? Is this a corporate sabotage attempt? Were any of the contestants involved in this deception?" The chaos was total. Jack, stunned by the sudden invasion, instinctively reached for Emma's hand. To his surprise and relief, she took it, intertwining her fingers with his. It was in that moment of confusion that Brittany stepped forward, her face a mask of determination. "Wait!" she shouted, managing to momentarily silence the crowd. I knew about this." All eyes turned to her. Brittany took a deep breath before continuing. "I discovered the truth about Jack, and I made a deal with him to keep the secret. I thought I could use this information to win, but now I realize how wrong I was." A new murmur of surprise ran through the room. Miss Texas, who had been observing everything in silence, stepped forward. "I knew too. I overheard their conversation in the garden last night, but I didn't say anything because I saw something more than deception. I saw two people who really cared for each other, beyond appearances or status." The journalist who had been investigating Jack raised his hand, calling for silence. "Mr. Morgan, what do you have to say in your defense?" Jack looked around at the expectant faces of the contestants, at Mike's worried expression, at the inquisitive eyes of the journalists. Finally, his gaze rested on Emma, who gave him a slight nod of support. "What I did was wrong," Jack began, his voice clear and firm. "I deceived all of you, and there's no excuse for that. I entered this contest looking for something authentic, something real in a world that seemed increasingly fake to me. But in the process, I realized that authenticity is not found through deception." He paused, gently squeezing Emma's hand. "I found what I was looking for, but not in the way I expected. I saw kindness in people like Emma, who treated me with kindness when she thought I was. I saw determination and passion in each of the contestants, and I realized that true beauty is not in a title or a crown, but in people's actions and hearts." He turned to the contestants. "I ask forgiveness from all of you. This contest should be about your talents, your dreams, and your efforts, not about my deceptions. If there's anything I can do to make up for the harm I've caused, I'll do it." A charged silence followed his words. It was Miss Texas who broke it. "I forgive you," she said simply, one by one. Other contestants nodded, some murmuring words of forgiveness, others simply accepting with a gesture. The journalist stepped forward. "Mr. Morgan, what will happen to the contest now?" Jack looked at Mike, who nodded slightly. "The contest will continue," he declared, "but with changes. All current judges will be replaced by an independent panel, and the television network will donate twice the cash prize to charities chosen by the contestants." A murmur of approval ran through the room. Brittany, with tears in her eyes, approached Jack and Emma. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "To both of you, I was so obsessed with winning that I forgot why I wanted to be Miss United States in the first place. To make a difference." Emma smiled at her, extending her free hand towards her. "You still can, Brittany. We all can." As the journalists continued to ask questions and the contestants animatedly discussed the proposed changes, Jack turned to Emma. "I know I've failed you," he said softly, "and I'll understand if you can't forgive me." Emma looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching for something in his. Finally, a small smile curved her lips. "The man I fell in love with, the one who showed kindness and compassion, even when he pretended to have nothing. That man is real, and that's the man I see now, Jack." With those words, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly, ignoring the camera flashes and surprised gasps around them. As the kiss ended, Jack rested his forehead against Emma's. "What do we do now?" he asked, feeling truly vulnerable and authentic. For the first time in a long time, Emma smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "Now," she said, "we start over. No disguises, no deceptions, just us, as we are." And so, in the midst of the chaos of an exposed beauty pageant, camera flashes, and an uncertain future, Jack Morgan found something that all his money had never been able to buy: true love and the promise of a new beginning. What none of them knew was that this was just the beginning of a new adventure, one that would test their love, their integrity, and their determination in ways they never could have imagined. 3 months had passed, since the tumultuous revelation at the Miss United States pageant. The morning sun filtered through the silk curtains of Jack Morgan's penthouse, gently illuminating Emma's face as she slept peacefully beside him. Jack watched her with a mixture of love and amazement. After everything they had been through, it still seemed like a miracle to wake up next to her every morning. Careful not to wake her, he got up and headed to the balcony, where he could see the city of New York waking up. The past few months had been a whirlwind of changes and challenges. As promised, Jack had implemented significant changes to the pageant. An independent panel of judges had been selected, and the pageant final had been conducted with unprecedented transparency. To many people's surprise, including Brittany herself, it was Miss Texas who took the crown. Her platform of community work and genuine kindness had captivated both the jury and the public. Brittany, in a gesture no one would have expected months ago, was the first to congratulate her. The scandal, as expected, had generated headlines for weeks. But Jack's honesty in facing his mistakes and his commitment to making things right had gradually changed the narrative. From being seen as a manipulative millionaire, Jack had become an example of redemption and positive change. His thoughts were interrupted by Emma's soft touch on his back. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head on his shoulder. Jack smiled, covering her hands with his. "About how much everything has changed, how lucky I am." Emma laughed softly. Who would have thought that a fake homeless man and a pageant assistant would end up like this? They turned to look at each other, and Jack marveled once again at the depth of Emma's eyes. "Do you regret anything?" he asked, a hint of his old insecurity showing in his voice. Emma shook her head. "Not for a second. Sure, it wasn't the most conventional path, but it brought us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." They went back into the apartment, where breakfast was waiting for them. As they ate, they discussed their plans for the day. "Remember, we have the meeting with the foundation this afternoon," Emma mentioned. "They want to discuss expanding the scholarship program." Jack nodded. After the pageant, they had decided to channel a large part of their resources into social projects. The Morgan Foundation, co-directed by both of them, had quickly become a benchmark in education and community development. "By the way," Emma added with a mischievous smile, "I got a message from Brittany this morning. She says the advertising campaign for the hotels is going very well. Looks like you've kept your promise, after all." Jack laughed. "Who would have thought, huh? Brittany has turned out to be an excellent brand ambassador. And I heard she's considering running for public office in New York. People can surprise you," Emma reflected. "They just need the opportunity to show the best of themselves." They finished their breakfast and prepared for the day. As Jack adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, he couldn't help but think about how different his life was now. He no longer felt alone at the top. Now he had a purpose, a partner, and a new perspective on what really mattered. Before leaving, Jack stopped and took Emma's hands in his. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Emma looked at him expectantly, a mixture of curiosity and love in her eyes. Jack took a deep breath. "Emma, these months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've taught me the value of authenticity, of true love. You've made me a better person." He paused, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Would you do me the honor of marrying me?" Emma's eyes filled with tears as a smile lit up her face. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times. "Yes." As Jack slid the ring onto her finger, they both knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. A chapter filled with love, challenges, and above all, authenticity. They left the apartment hand in hand, ready to face the world together. On the streets of New York, some people recognized Jack, the millionaire who had disguised himself as a homeless man, and Emma, the woman who had seen beyond appearances. But for them, titles and labels no longer mattered. They were simply Jack and Emma, two people who had found true love in the most unexpected place. As they got into the car, Emma looked at Jack with a mischievous smile. "You know, I think our story would make for a great soap opera." Jack laughed, starting the engine. Maybe, but I prefer living it to watching it on TV. And so, amidst laughter and plans for the future, Jack and Emma headed towards their next adventure, knowing that whatever happened, they would face it together. In the offices of a television production company across town, a screenwriter was finishing the last episode of a new soap opera titled The Millionaire Beggar. He smiled with satisfaction, knowing he had a story in his hands that would captivate millions. Little did he know that the real story, that of Jack and Emma, continued to unfold on the streets of New York. More exciting and real than any fiction,